The air cracked as he snapped his broken bone back into place. No scream, no hesitation, just the sharp grind of fractured flesh realigning under pressure. Blood soaked the sand beneath him, but Shady barely flinched. His eyes locked onto the figure looming ahead, the blue-skinned warrior with the glowing blade. Her armor shimmered like liquid metal. Her stare was cold, calculating. Alien. She didn't move. Not out of fear, but something close to it. Curiosity. Confusion. Maybe even awe. "You just repaired yourself?" she asked, her voice low and mechanical, yet tinged with something deeply human. Shady grinned through the pain. "That wasn't repair," he said. "That was an upgrade." The silence between them grew heavy, because in that moment, Alena, a soldier from a race that once conquered galaxies, saw something impossible. Not just resilience, not just strength, but a threat she didn't understand. A human who didn't just survive. A human who evolved. And in her eyes, something shifted. Not fear of his power, but fear of what it meant. He wasn't what she'd been told. He wasn't what she expected. He wasn't entirely human. Shady hadn't planned to end up here. Half dead in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by rock spires like a cage built by time itself. But plans had never meant much in a world where survival depended less on strategy and more on instinct. And instinct was something he had in abundance. His ribs ached. His leg throbbed. His left forearm twitched from the nerve damage. But he was alive. Still breathing. Still dangerous. The heat was unbearable. Sweat dripped down his temple, mixing with dirt and dried blood. Every breath tasted like rust and smoke. He'd been hunted for 2 days, maybe 3, it was hard to tell. The line between night and day blurred when you were running for your life. Or more accurately, when something far beyond life was chasing you. And now she stood before him. Alena, 7 feet tall, armored in gold and obsidian. Her skin was blue, but not like paint or pigment. Pulsed faintly, like bioluminescence under flesh. Her eyes glowed from within, intelligent, piercing, ancient. She hadn't attacked yet. That alone unsettled him more than any weapon could have. "Why are you hesitating?" he asked, dragging himself into a seated position, ignoring the fire in his muscles. "You're not what I expected," she said flatly. He laughed, dry and bitter. "That makes 2 of us." The silence that followed wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't threatening either. It was loaded, like the calm before something neither of them had a name for. Alena had been bred for conquest, engineered to dominate lesser species. Earth, to her kind, was a wild, broken planet barely worth notice, until humanity started doing things they weren't supposed to. Like Shady, a hybrid of pain and precision, a byproduct of desperation. His body was human, mostly, but his bones, reinforced with carbon lattice. His nervous system, laced with micro-regenerative threads. A military project. A failed one, officially. But here he was, bleeding, breathing, unbroken. She took a step closer, her blade humming with silent energy. Shady didn't move, couldn't, but he didn't show fear. He wasn't sure he even felt it anymore. "You should be dead," she said almost to herself. He met her eyes. "So should you." A flicker passed over her face. Emotion, recognition, doubt, whatever it was, it made her lower the weapon. "What are you?" she asked. The question landed harder than her blade ever could. Because for a moment, Shady didn't know. Not really. Not anymore. "I'm what happens," he said slowly, "when you push a species too far." Alena stared at him, not as an enemy, not as a target, but as something new, something terrifying, something worth understanding. And just like that, the balance shifted. This wasn't a mission anymore. This was the beginning of something neither of them could control. Or stop. The canyon held its breath. Shady leaned back against the stone, his chest rising and falling, slower now. The pain was still there, gnawing at his nerves like a dog on a bone, but it was manageable. He had learned long ago how to compartmentalize it, how to take agony and make it useful. Across from him, Alena stood like a statue, still, silent, but not at ease. Her mission was simple. Observe, classify, eliminate threats. Earth was considered low risk, a feral world barely crawling toward planetary unity. Primitive weapons, divided governments, weak biology. But this man, he was not in the data. Alena lowered her weapon just slightly. What are you made of? She asked. Shady gave a half smile. Pain mostly. She didn't laugh. Aliens don't laugh at human jokes. Not when the punchline bleeds. She scanned him again. This time with her own eyes, not the sensor implanted in her spine. She noticed the scars, the reinforced skin, the faint glimmer under his flesh where light caught the metal threadwork beneath. You're not enhanced, she muttered. You're altered. Same difference, he said. One's planned. The other's a mistake that worked. Flashback, 2 years earlier. A cold white room. Military logos on the walls, half erased with time and budget cuts. Shady strapped to a gurney. Surgeons in mech suits. No anesthesia. Just metal slicing into bone and nanofiber stitching flesh that refused to stay broken. The program had no name. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was Project Skinwalker, an attempt to make soldiers that didn't need medics, sleep, or fear. Shady hadn't volunteered. But once you're labeled expendable, choice becomes a myth. Back to present. My body breaks, he said, locking eyes with Alena. But it learns. Every fracture makes me harder to kill. She studied him with unnerving calm. Why would your kind build something like you? Shady chuckled darkly. We didn't build me to survive. We built me to win. That answer hit deeper than she expected. In her world, survival was coded into genetics, perfection from birth. Failure wasn't allowed. Evolution was engineered. But this was different. Messier. Driven by fear, not design. Your species evolved through violence, she said. Through failure. Shady shrugged. And you're stagnated in success. Funny how that works. Alena flinched. She had never been spoken to like that. Not by her own kind. Not by any species. And yet, here this broken human sat, defiant, battered, bleeding, and still somehow winning the conversation. Why are you here? He asked suddenly. She didn't answer. He pushed. Earth isn't a threat to your people. Not yet. So what are you really doing here, Alena? The sound of her name in his mouth made her pulse react in ways she didn't understand. She didn't like it, but she didn't stop it either. My orders were to observe anomalous developments, she said quietly. Then neutralize them if necessary. And I'm the anomaly? She hesitated. Yes. A long silence stretched between them. Shady looked down at his leg, at the swelling already reduced thanks to his body's slow, unnatural rebuilding process. Then you're gonna have a tough choice soon, he muttered. Because I'm not the only one like me. Her eyes widened just slightly. There are more. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Failed experiments. Forgotten prototypes. But not dead. Not all of them. Alena's mind raced. If this was true, Earth was no longer a footnote in their conquest plans, it was a variable. A threat. A wild card. And in the center of it all, this man. This broken, rebuilt, unrelenting man. Shady leaned forward. Pain in his voice but steel in his words. You came here thinking we were weak because we break. But what you don't get is, breaking is what makes us dangerous. She stared at him, and for the first time she didn't see a primitive. She saw a survivor. No, more than that. A warning. The fire had died down to glowing embers. Shady sat with his back against a cold rock wall, his eyes half-lidded from exhaustion, his muscles tight but still alert. A rough splint braced his leg, crudely fashioned but effective. Beside him, the silence was no longer empty. It was charged, filled with things neither of them wanted to say. Alena stood a few feet away, arms crossed, the blue glow of her armor dimmed. Not because she was relaxed, but because she didn't want to scare him. Not openly. She didn't know why she cared. They hadn't spoken in hours. But their silence wasn't born of apathy. It was born of friction, of unspoken questions. of clashing truths. You burn to build. We build to prevent burning. Alena finally spoke, her voice smooth and deliberate. My people evolved without war, without collapse. We learned cooperation before conflict. And we spread through the stars without destroying ourselves in the process. Shady looked up at her, expression unreadable. Congratulations. Want a medal? Her tone didn't shift. Your civilization destroys itself every few centuries. You invent weapons before you invent cures. You burn your forests and poison your seas just to make your lives more convenient. And yet, he said, we're still here. Barely. He chuckled, bitter and hollow. You think survival only counts if it's clean? No. But there's a difference between surviving and becoming worthy of survival. That landed. Heavy. Shady looked away, his jaw tight. And who decides that? You. Alena didn't answer. Maybe because she couldn't. Or maybe because she wasn't sure anymore. An unspoken mirror. She had been trained to view humans as unstable. A species with potential but no discipline. Brilliant in bursts. Dangerous in clusters. Too emotional. Too reactive. Too flawed. But this man, bloodied, limping, laughing at the void, was forcing her to reevaluate everything. He hadn't just survived. He'd adapted. Pain had shaped him. Loss had tempered him. He bore his trauma like armor. And beneath it all, he had compassion. Humor. Defiance. The very things her people had abandoned in pursuit of control. She hated how human he made her feel. We're broken on purpose. Shady finally broke the silence again. You know what your problem is? He asked. Alena raised a brow. Enlighten me. You don't know what it means to fail. She tilted her head slightly. Why would we want to? Because failure teaches you how to start again. Teaches you humility, patience, creativity. You ever fix a ship engine with nothing but scrap and duct tape in a dust storm? No. Exactly. You don't improvise. You execute. You follow orders like code running in a straight line. Efficient. Predictable. Cold. Better than chaos. Not always. He leaned forward, eyes dark with heat. Chaos gives birth to beauty, to revolution, to art, to love. Alena stiffened. Love is a chemical misfire, a liability. Shady smiled, spoken like someone who's never felt it. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. A hesitation, a glitch, trust, tension, and firelight. The canyon night turned cold. Alena finally sat across from him. Not too close, but not far either. The fire between them danced in soft orange against stone. She removed one of her armored gauntlets, letting her hand hover near the flames, fingers long and elegant, almost human in shape. You're wrong about one thing, she said softly. Shady looked up. I felt it. Love. That surprised him. I was engineered for obedience, she continued. But my first assignment was to observe a pre-contact species. They were gentle, naive, curious. One of them, he taught me music, gave me a name. I wasn't Alena back then. What happened? My superiors terminated him for contamination. Shady's face darkened. Because he made you feel. Yes. Silence again. Not empty this time. This silence was a wound shared. The breaking point. You're not as different as you think, Shady said. And you're not as primitive as we thought, she replied. But even as their walls lowered, the divide remained. Two species, two ideologies, two hearts trained to survive, not trust. Still, something unspoken bloomed between them. Not love, not yet, but its distant echo. Recognition, respect, maybe even longing. Alena broke the gaze first. We're not allies yet, she said flatly. I wouldn't trust me either, Shady replied with a grin. She stood, blade hilt lighting faintly on her hip. But I'm not here to kill you. Not tonight. He raised a brow. That's progress. She turned away, disappearing into the dark edge of the canyon. But her voice drifted back to him. Don't die before I get answers. Shady leaned his head back against the stone, smirking through the pain. I'll try not to. The canyon stretched into silence again. But this time it wasn't hostile. It was expectant. Shady sat awake long after Alena vanished into the shadows. He should have slept. His body was healing slower now. The nanofiber threads beneath his skin needed energy. Rest. Time. But his mind wouldn't stop. He wasn't thinking about the pain. He was thinking about her. She had opened a door and left it slightly ajar. A name from her past. A confession. A glimpse of something real behind that polished, weaponized exterior. And now he couldn't forget it. Couldn't pretend she was just another scout from another cold race of conquerors. She wasn't. She was something more. And maybe, just maybe, so was he. She came back before sunrise. Quiet. Intentional. Carrying something strange. A silver cube, humming softly with light. She dropped it beside him without a word. What's this? Shady asked, eyeing it. Medical core, Alena replied. Your body's repairs are slowing. This will accelerate them. He frowned. Why help me? She didn't look at him. Because if you die out here, I won't get the truth I came for. A weak excuse. He could hear it in her voice. Still, he didn't argue. He pressed his hand to the cube. It hissed, scanning his vitals, releasing a slow pulse of healing mist into his bloodstream. Warmth spread through him. He sighed, finally relaxing. For a moment there was peace. The shift. They moved together now, carefully, across ravines and crumbling terrain. She scouted. He mapped. They shared food. Traded quiet sarcasm. The line between prisoner and protector blurred. They were two anomalies in a world that no longer made sense. At night, Alena asked questions. Why do humans keep loving people who leave them? Why do you tell jokes when you're dying? Why did you risk your life to protect a child in your memory logs? And Shady answered honestly. Because love was the only war worth losing. Because laughter made death wait a little longer. Because children were hope. And hope is all you have when the world turns to ash. Alena didn't always respond. But she always listened. The mission reawakens. Then came the signal. A pulse through the stars. A coded vibration only she could feel, like static under the skin. Her command unit had found her. She stepped away from camp in the night, her fingers trembling as she activated the comlink embedded in her spine. The voice came through instantly. Report. Is the target terminated? Alena didn't answer. You were assigned to neutralize biological rogue variant 7H. Confirm execution. Her mouth went dry. Shady. He wasn't just an anomaly. He was the anomaly. The entire reason she had been deployed in secret. They feared what he represented. And now so did she. But not because of his strength. Because of what he was becoming to her. She stared into the stars. Torn between protocol and something older. Something deeper. Choice. The confrontation. She returned to camp with no emotion on her face. Shady noticed immediately. You spoke to them. She nodded. And they know you're alive. Shady didn't flinch. Then they'll come. They're already coming. He looked away, jaw tight. So that's it? Back to being enemies? Alena hesitated. No. That single word broke something open between them. Shady stood, pain echoing through his joints, but his voice steady. Then say it. Out loud. I should have killed you, she whispered. I was ordered to. I was trained to. But every moment I spent with you, you made that order feel like a lie. Shady stepped closer. So what now? I don't know. The line is crossed. Their hands met. Not in violence, not in command, but in understanding. Flesh and blue light, pulse and code. They weren't the same. They were never meant to be. But for one breathless moment, they were together in the space between. Not enemies, not allies, something else, something dangerous. Then the sound split the air. A deafening, high-pitched roar. Ships breaking atmosphere. Engines burning clouds. The strike force was here, far earlier than expected. Alena's eyes turned to the sky. We don't have time. Shady reached for his gear. Then let's make this count. She didn't stop him. She joined him, The sky tore open with fire. 3 alien crafts descended in unison, their hulls gleaming like black bone under the rising sun. The sound they made wasn't just mechanical, it was alive, pulsing through the rocks, into the teeth, into the chest. Alena had heard it before. Shady had not. But he didn't run. He checked the charge on his battered sidearm, tightened the brace on his leg, and looked to Alena. She wasn't giving orders. Not anymore. Her face was calm, but her eyes, those bright, ancient eyes, burned with something new. Resolve. They won't ask questions, she said. I'm used to that, Shady replied. Most people prefer shooting first. They won't stop at you. Once they're here, they'll classify this planet as compromised. Shady raised an eyebrow. So this isn't just about me anymore? It never was. For a long time, neither of them moved. Then she tossed him something small. A silver disc, blinking red on one side. What's this? He asked. Detonation command. If I fall, you press it. Why? Because I can't let them leave this planet. Not with what they know. Not with what you are. He caught the disc, holding her gaze. I'm not sure I'm worth that kind of sacrifice. You are to me, she said. It didn't feel like a confession. Felt like a decision. One forged in long silences, in broken bones, in moments of shared warmth around fire. No romance, no illusions. Just the raw gravity between two beings who had no one left to trust but each other. The first ship landed hard, kicking up a storm of dust and broken stone. From the belly of the vessel, soldiers emerged. Taller than Alena, clad in full war armor, visors pulsing, weapons drawn. Shady muttered, Your people don't mess around. They don't see life. They see targets. Alena stepped forward, her own armor glowing brighter now, a clear signal to the others. Shady limped after her, slower but not hesitant. One of the soldiers spoke, his voice booming in her native tongue. Shady didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Authority, anger, and expectation. Alena stood firm. Her voice answered, clear and defiant. The soldier barked again, more aggressive this time. The other troops raised their rifles. And then Alena did the unthinkable. She stepped in front of Shady. A wall of blue between him and their fire. Shady felt his pulse stop. They hesitated. In Alena's culture, loyalty was absolute. Orders were truth. Disobedience was treason. But there she stood, protecting what her people feared most. An evolving human. A biological threat. A mirror they didn't want to face. One soldier fired. A warning shot barely. Shady didn't wait for the second. He moved faster than he should have been able to, firing off 2 precise blasts. One hit a weapon, knocking it free. The other grazed armor but stunned just enough to buy seconds. Chaos erupted. Alena drew her blade. Fluid light singing through the air as she deflected fire and disarmed with surgical brutality. Shady fought with grit, each shot fueled by instinct and anger. He wasn't faster. He wasn't stronger. But he was unpredictable, and that made him dangerous. One by one, the soldiers fell back, not dead but disabled. Alena hadn't killed them. She could have, but she didn't. Shady noticed. They won't forgive this, he said, panting. I'm not doing it for forgiveness, she replied. He stared at her. In the chaos, dust swirling around them, weapons humming hot in their hands, there was clarity. He didn't just trust her. He believed in her, the way she had chosen to believe in him. What now? He asked. She looked to the sky. More ships were coming. She could feel it in her blood, in the hum of the atmosphere. This was only a scout team, she said. The real force won't hesitate. We can't fight them. Not forever. Shady looked down at the detonation command in his hand. You still want me to push this if you fall? She turned to him, quiet. No. If I fall, we finish it together. Something inside him shifted then. A slow, quiet surrender. Not to her. Not to fate. But to the truth. They had crossed the line. There was no turning back. He reached for her hand. She took it. Not as an alien. Not as a soldier. But as someone who understood that survival isn't about power, or bloodlines, or orders. It's about choosing who you become, even when everything tells you not to. And they had chosen each other. Not out of weakness, but because in each other, they'd found the one thing both species had forgotten how to protect. Hope. They ran for hours beneath a burning sky. Smoke from the crashed scout ship coiled through the horizon. The world felt quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that came before extinction. Shady's legs screamed with every step, even with Alena helping him stay upright. He didn't complain. There was no point. She didn't speak either. They didn't need to. Behind them, the stars shifted. Not visibly, but subtly in ways only someone like Alena could sense. Tear in orbit. A rupture. The flagship had arrived. They reached the ridge overlooking the valley. Dry, dead land with twisted metal ruins scattered across the dust like bones. It had once been an outpost, long forgotten after a human rebellion collapsed there decades ago. Now it was just silence and echoes. Shady dropped to one knee, panting. Alena scanned the horizon. They'll land here. It's flat. Exposed. Command will deploy an execution unit. Faster than the scouts. No questions. No speeches. Shady nodded slowly, wiping sweat from his brow. You sure you want to be here when that happens? She turned to him, eyes calm. I'm not going anywhere. He looked at her differently now. Not with suspicion. Not even with awe. Just with quiet understanding. They had crossed 1,000 lines in the last few days, between duty and defiance, between species, between logic and something that felt dangerously close to love. And now there was no going back. I have a way to end it, she said. He waited. They'll be vulnerable during descent. If I override their entry codes and input a falsified re-entry pattern, their ship will think Earth's atmosphere is clear. But it won't be. Shady frowned. You're going to burn them on entry. She nodded once. He stood beside her, steadying himself. And you? I have to be inside the network core to trigger it. Which means I'll be inside their vessel. He understood instantly. That's a suicide run. Alena didn't answer. That silence was the answer. No, he said quietly. We do it together. You can't help me from in there. You said it yourself. I'm an anomaly. They won't expect me to walk straight into their ship. She looked at him like she didn't want to believe it. Like she wanted to stop him. But she didn't argue. Because she knew he was right. They moved fast back into the canyon where the signal uplink could be accessed. Alena worked quickly, fingers dancing across her wrist module, hacking into frequencies designed to be unbreakable. She was faster than their own technicians. That's what she had been bred for. Flawless obedience and flawless precision. But something inside her now pulsed with rebellion. Not for war, not for power, but for him. He watched her face as she worked. Focused, fierce, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her skin or her species. Beautiful because she chose this for herself. For something she hadn't been allowed to want. The transmission sent. The trap was laid. All that remained now was time. As the sky split open again and the mothership began descent, Shady stepped beside her. Whatever happens next, he said. I don't regret any of it. She looked at him. A long, deep look. I wasn't meant to feel, she said softly. But you taught me how to choose. Then, without hesitation, she pulled him forward. Not in battle. Not in fear. But in something far more dangerous. In trust. Their foreheads touched. And for a single breath, they weren't human or alien. They weren't soldier or experiment. They were simply two beings who had found each other at the end of the world. Then the earth shook. The flagship descended. The final act had begun. They ran. Straight toward the threat. Together. 10 minutes later, the ship exploded mid-descent. Its sleek frame torn apart by its own re-entry code. Flames rolled across the sky like waves. The light was blinding. The sound, apocalyptic. And in the silence that followed, the stars blinked into place once more. No reinforcements came. No command voice returned. Just the wind. And a figure emerging from the edge of the scorched valley. Shady. burned, bleeding, alive. He staggered forward, half limping, half crawling, clutching something small and blackened in his hand. A shard of her armor. He fell to his knees at the edge of the ridge where they'd planned everything. His breath shuddered. She was gone. And yet, not gone. Not really. Because in him something new had taken root. Not technology. Not vengeance. But a fire. The kind that survives long after the war ends. The kind that builds something better in the ruins. A voice echoed in his memory, soft and unshakable. You taught me how to choose. And he whispered back to the wind, so did you. As the sun broke over the ashes, Shady stood, alone but not defeated, and walked into a future no one had prepared for. A future born from fire, from fracture, from something neither of their species had ever dared to imagine. Connection,